What's up, guys, and welcome to Paint Bravely. My name is Casey.
And I'm Brent.
And we are going to talk a little bit about painting, kind of get into who we are, what this podcast is all about, and kind of see where it takes us.
Yeah, welcome to episode 1 here. Yeah.
So, how are you doing today, Brent?
I'm doing well. So, a little bit excited about starting this podcast here. What else is going on? I actually did some painting last night, so that's good. That's not an every night thing, but
It's not
good to get back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. Kind of goes in spurts.
All right.
But yeah, last night painted a dwarf. Felt pretty good about that.
You using that dwarf for anything specific?
Oh, you'll see.
Speaking of which, if you don't know who we are, we both have YouTube channels. I am eBay Miniature Rescues, if you've ever seen that, and Brent.
Goobertown Hobbies.
The Goobs.
Yes.
Do you like that name?
The Goobs, take it or leave it. Goobertown Hobbies I've become quite attached to. Goobertown, very much like those names.
There's randos coming up to you on the street going, "Hey, Goobs."
Yeah, that's, did not foresee that one, but that's all right. We'll go with it.
Yeah. So why did we start this podcast, Brent?
Well, there's a question. For me, I actually listen to a lot more podcasts than I watch YouTube channels. As I'm painting, I can listen to a podcast easy. As I'm cleaning the house, I can listen to a podcast. As I'm driving, I can listen to a podcast. And that is not the way that I consume YouTube videos. So although kind of both of us started out-ish as a YouTube channel, I actually consume a lot of podcasts. And so I wanted to have that be one of the media outlets of Goobertown and eBay Miniature Rescues here.
Yeah. And I suppose it's kind of the same for me. Like I do listen to a lot of podcasts and personally find a lot of enjoyment out of that. It does help me paint, it's one of those things that kind of goes a lot with painting. A lot of people listen to audiobooks and, they'll throw something on TV while they paint. And, I think we both kind of wanted that to be really what this is, like, finding that encouragement and, different things you can do in the hobby. And, like the namesake of this podcast is learning how to paint bravely and what that really means to us.
Absolutely. So the way that I think both of us approach this hobby is more painting and hobby and, making than it is the gaming side of things. There are plenty of podcasts about, Warhammer gaming or other, tabletop games. Fewer podcasts about painting. And so we wanted to make a painting podcast that was really our voice, our mojo, and see where that goes.
Our mojo, I like that.
Yeah, it just came to me. Good, huh? Yeah.
I like it. This is good. So why don't we get into, I guess, how did we meet and why are we doing this together? Because, I think a lot of people that have at least come from that YouTube side have seen us do quite a bit together.
Yeah.
But they don't really understand what's going on there.
Right. So we found each other's channels. I think, to be fair, I found your channel first.
You did. You reached out to me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. It was a little more than a year ago. So actually, I'm pretty sure it was either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day of 2018.
Yes.
And all right, so we were both running very small or relatively small YouTube channels at this time.
We had 50 subs, man.
Yeah, you had 75. I had 50. You had 75.
Oh, I was ahead of you? Oh,
yeah. But anyway, the reason I remember this is because Gloomspite Gits had just been announced. And I had goblins that I wanted to paint. I had goblins that needed painting, and I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna make a YouTube video on goblins, and I just gotta find a cool paint scheme. And so I went looking for cool paint schemes. I found your video painting goblins, and I basically stole your paint scheme to paint my goblins.
You did.
And Yep. But I did it in a respectful manner, and
Oh,
that led to a
100%.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but some of our favorite videos are you painted some yellow goblins and I painted some yellow goblins. And for me at least, the yellow goblins video I made got a lot of subscribers and was kind of an important moment in the lifespan of Goobertown Hobbies.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, I just remember like both of us had small channels. I found you. We liked each other's videos, and over time we started doing some collaborations. I think you were the first channel I ever did a collaboration with where we like sent
Hmm.
each other a mystery mini, and that was a fun video. You sent me a Dark Elder homunculus, and I made
Yeah.
a video out of that, and you got a exorcist.
Holy crap. That still
Yeah.
blows me away.
um so Yeah, I mean, in anything in life, it's awesome to find peers and people you connect with and friends. And so we were both starting out on our little YouTube adventure here. We found each other, we muckled onto each other. We've been talking and hanging out ever since. And the time has finally come, more than a year later, where it's time for us to start a podcast. So here we are, here you are. Buckle up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we, our hope, I guess, we can get in kind of the general structure of how we want to run this podcast. Like, I'd say it's fairly traditional, but we want to touch on topics that might go a little bit deeper into the hobby and into again that kind of painting bravely aspect of things. Like for this episode we want to talk a little bit about what are some good hobbies out there and why do we choose miniature painting specifically over other hobbies.
Right.
So, like, Brent, do you do anything else besides miniature painting? And, like, how does that compare to
I
miniature
do.
painting?
I do. Yeah, I've had many hobbies over my life. Some that have kind of phased out, some that I come back to over and over again. Thrift shopping. I love to go to the Goodwill and find a project, whether that's an
Yes.
old desk or table to refinish, or whether that's I had a phase where I was really into old iMacs, where I wanted to turn an old like lime green iMac into a planter, or actually I did turn it into a PC. Like I built a PC inside an old iMac.
Inside of it?
Yeah, it took me like a day to like clean out all of the really old hardware inside, to
Mm-hmm.
read the instructions for how to clip the cables on the old CRT monitor and stuff in there, and just like figure out how all this went together and just get a plastic shell of the iMac. And then I figured out how to use a tiny motherboard for a modern PC and to fit that in there and to get the fans, hard drive, and everything all wired up. I found actually a touchscreen, like 15-inch square monitor that basically fit the cutout for the iMac. I built that in there, and I got it all booted up, and it was running great. And I installed League of Legends on there. Another hobby, video games. We'll get to that, but
Yeah.
and then I sat down to play a game of my iMac PC pack G3 lime green monstrosity, and then I'm like, wait, I have no desire to play a game at like 800 by 600 resolution
Right.
anymore. This is awful. And then so that so some projects turn out great, some fail, but
Yeah.
so when sometimes when people ask me what my hobbies are, I'll say like I really like projects, which what
Projects.
does that mean?
Yeah.
But there's always like something that grabs my attention that, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to build and make and restore and solve some problems and get some stupid idea that I have to work out reasonably well. And sometimes they do. Yeah. And yeah, I can get inspiration for things at a thrift store or a pile of trash on the side of the street or anything like that.
Now,
But
pile of trash on the side of the street. There's a story there.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah. Um, I mean, I've furniture is something that I like actively look for on the side of the street.
Right.
And for all you listening at home, nothing with cushions. You don't want bed bugs.
No, that sounds terrible.
I've never had bed bugs, but like, don't you be taking things with cushions into your home.
Right.
That's not a good idea. But you find anything made out of hardwood.
Mhm.
Oh, you can do something with that.
Yeah.
So I've been I actually have a couple of like old futons in my basement right now. Just futons that were made out of hardwood, and they're completely busted in terms of like actually working as a futon.
Yeah.
But I still got a little supply of hardwood there. We'll do something with that, or you get a nice table or a desk, or who knows what you'll find.
That's true.
And of course, even most of the furniture you'll find on the side of the road is IKEA garbage.
Yeah, and I just don't know. IKEA in itself it starts off as kind of trash to begin with. And I mean, I know there's the hardware, but it's not great. It's not great stuff.
I think IKEA starts off like the first day that you have it. I think it's pretty cool. Like it's clean. It's clean, it's square and plumb and flush and whatever the other words are. Like the surfaces don't have massive bows to them when they start off.
You haven't spilled a pitcher of water on your table yet?
Right. There's not insane water damage all over the place of like bubbling particle board. So I think when IKEA furniture starts off, it looks cool, which is why there's so much of it on the side of the road now, is because people get it, and then 5 years later it's on the side of the road. But
5 years, wow, you're giving it a lot of credit there.
Well, after 3 years, you give it to like a poor relative, and then a couple years later, it's on the side of the road.
You donate it after the first spill. Somebody else can go to a thrift store and be like, "Yes, new project."
Right,
it's you most of the time.
But now, if you see any IKEA furniture with drawers, you see like an old IKEA chest of drawers, you go and get that hardware. Like if you carry a screwdriver around with you in your car, your backpack, or whatever, and you see an old set of drawers, you take those drawer pulls. You take those sliders. You never know what they'll be good for. You'll find a way. I don't think of myself as a hoarder, but some people could classify it as that. But and this gets into mini painting too. Like I have over the years developed a pretty good collection through eBay, but really Craigslist has been a major boon for me in terms of just kind of trolling for deals. Seeing what opportunities are out there. And I've had a couple of good hauls in my time, and that's really built up my collection and my pile of shame and my to-do list. So
yeah, that to-do list that doesn't seem to ever go away. I mean, I have a closet full of what a lot of people might consider to be, Warhammer garbage. Obviously, me being the eBay rescue guy, that's what I'm looking for. Cheap garbage that I can make into something new, that restoration aspect. And that certainly goes into thrift shopping, which we'll definitely have to have an episode on at some point, because I enjoy a good thrift shop almost every weekend. Yeah. And we're gonna have to
nice.
Have you ever gone into a thrift store, been looking through, you're looking at all the stuff, and you find something, you're like, oh, I have one of these and I could use 2 of these, and you purchase it. I don't have a good example for what it could be, but you're like, 2 is better than 1. This is useful. And then you get home and you realize that the thing you just bought isn't the second thing. It's the thing you donated 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I have never had that happen. No, that's low, man. That's low. Yeah. Look, yesterday I was at Goodwill, and I had a good long look at a cast iron skillet. And I already have a cast iron skillet, and it was...
But 2 is better than 1 cast iron skillets,
Yeah, and I had a good long thing, and this time I didn't do it. But, man, it all depends on the mood, on the day.
Yeah,
Like, that's dangerous.
it can be. Yeah,
Yeah.
buying your own things back from the thrift store is it's a real low point in life.
Yeah. Um, but on that, I think both of us really do enjoy old Warhammer models
Hmm.
and restoring old Warhammer models. Sometimes the best you can do with them is turn them into bits for something else, or turn
Yeah,
them into terrain or something like that. But yeah, both of us do have a serious collection of busted up models that some of them can be salvaged and some of them probably can't.
yeah.
Um, but even then, I have a ton of like old Dark Eldar warriors that have been snapped so many times just because they were poorly designed minis. Every one of them has a broken rifle, and you can see the seam because I cannot glue that seam to
Right.
be perfect anymore. It's always like, oh yeah, that's where the rifle is snapped. There is no there's no
That's
way to fix it.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
um, well, I say there's no way to fix it, but I have experimented with wrapping some thread around it or something to make it look like he's hanging some
Oh, there
cool
you go.
ornaments off of that
Yeah.
damaged area. But
Throw like a green stuff wrap around there, and yeah,
oh, sure,
yeah.
absolutely. And so even then, though, even on like really old nasty minis, I can still use them for experimenting with new paints, or checking airbrush recipes, playing
Hmm.
around with the airbrush, playing around with rattle cans.
Hmm.
If you're worried that you might be getting like a bad prime on a given day, if the weather is not right or whatever, you go outside with some old minis, just see what happens.
Yeah.
But anyway, so both of us, yeah, we're kind of hoarders when it comes to minis. That can be seen as a negative, but also I think both of us derive a lot of good out of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that we've both been able to use our piles of shame, as a lot of people like to call it, to make the hobby at least a little bit better of a place. And I do think that's a good place to be coming from. And I know we try and do that with our YouTube channels, and hopefully we can come across in the same type of a way in this podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So both of us, obviously, our hobby is painting minis, restoring minis, and having a YouTube channel. But what else do you do, Casey?
Well, I mean, there's a few things, and I think this might be a good time to talk about what are some other good hobbies. And I guess I'll go first. Um, Playing music. I've been in a band for 12 years, 13, almost 15 years. Yeah. Playing music, collecting musical gear, um, doing all that kind of thing. It's a good release from a lot of other things, kind of like miniature painting is, but it's on a different level. Like playing in front of people is a whole aspect, and learning complicated songs and that kind of thing. So that's a hobby that I've been doing, and I lightly call it a hobby, uh, only because for a long time it was like, this is going to be my job, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and weirdly, it like we're still going, but miniature painting has kind of taken over in the last couple years.
That
And
happens. Yeah,
yeah,
hobbies can kind of ebb and flow, and it's interesting to see which ones you keep coming back to and that really, make an impact on your life. And, some of them kind of fade out and maybe you'll never get back to them or it's going to be a long time. But
right.
for both of us, we've had different phases of mini painting in our lives, and that is something that we do keep coming back to.
Hmm. Yeah, mini painting has always been the hobby that I've come back to.
Yeah.
Like, I started painting and playing Warhammer. Man, it was over 20 years ago now, which
Yep,
really,
about the same for me. Yep,
yeah.
yep, yep, yep.
And I took a long break in there, didn't paint
Mm-hmm.
a thing, and then tried to come back a few times, to varying degrees of success. Yeah. And then this last one kind of stuck, I think YouTube helped quite a bit with that, but Yeah. I think mini painting is definitely one of those hobbies that, it's okay to take a break in because
Hmm.
it's always going to be there, or at least it feels like it does. It is going to be there.
I have definitely got that impression. I mean, as time goes by, the popularity of the hobby ebbs and wanes, and right now it seems more popular than maybe it's ever been, which is cool.
I think it
Um,
actually is like the
yeah,
at least for Games Workshop, I think they're on the highest point they've ever been on right now.
yeah, and I think like D&D is doing really well right now
Hmm.
too. Obviously, there are 3D printing, and there's tons of independent and smaller companies with board games, and it does seem like we're in a golden age for minis and mini painting and all that, which is cool. Um, so yeah, as time goes on, the popularity of this hobby can change, which might kind of affect your experience with the hobby.
Hmm.
And of course, as time goes on, the minis that are being released change. Some games come and go. I don't think Warma Hordes is quite what it was
Hmm.
a few years ago or whatnot. So if that happened to be your thing, like yeah, maybe the hobby's changed a little bit for you. Um, but on the other hand, like for the most part, it's just better and better minis and more minis coming out every year.
Yeah.
So for the most part, coming back to a hobby like this, there's just more stuff that you can do with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, looking at a lot of old minis that we have, like the quality level and the sculpts are so good these days. It's really hard to
Yeah.
find a bad mini. You get those memes every so often of like, your new Dark Eldar riding in canoes with their their
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
staffs and stuff. But I haven't seen anybody really complaining about those sculpts. I think just making fun of the fact that they look like that. They're like Games Workshop specifically isn't really producing bad stuff, which I think is pretty awesome, and it's been really good for the hobby.
Yeah, and that sets the bar for everybody, really.
Yeah.
In terms of like, you can get awesome minis that look like this in plastic. What are all these smaller companies going to do? They're going to find a way to try to compete, which is
Hmm.
awesome.
Oh yeah, and they are competing really hard. I mean, there are some small
Yeah.
companies. Like I just painted a cyborg miniature. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're resin hand sculpted. And I can't remember the guy's name. I know his last name is Cyber. So whatever his first name is, somebody will mention it, I'm sure. Um,
Cool. So Casey just
yeah,
called me out on a company that I did not immediately recognize.
really?
Thank you for
Okay,
that, Casey.
I did not know that.
No, I mean, no, it's in the back of my head. Like, yeah, I think I've heard of that before.
Yeah,
But it actually really is impressive how many small companies are out there right now.
yeah.
Going to like a convention in the vendor hall or whatever, and
Hmm.
just walking around, um, because both of us are fairly heavily involved in this hobby and are always trying to learn more about it. We're
Hmm.
aware of most of the stuff, but again, just walking around a vendor hall, I'm always surprised like how many companies, like entire companies, entire lines I just haven't heard of.
Right.
But then they just draw me in like, whoa, like what is that? Like
Yeah.
I had I had no idea that this company was producing awesome yetis and crocodiles for the last
Nice.
10 years and I'd never heard of them. Like this is awesome.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I think the hobby is in a good place, and that is definitely exciting for us.
Hmm.
Both of us are coming from a place where we want the hobby to grow.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
when when people tell us that they're getting back into the hobby or starting painting minis for the first time, that makes me feel good. Like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what we wanted to explore with this episode. So if somebody tells me that they're painting minis, I'm like, yes, like another person in the hobby, like, yes, I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Hmm.
That's a good thing for me. Now, if we can talk a little bit about like what makes a hobby good or bad, or what are good or bad hobbies, but
Right.
like if someone tells me that like I just started smoking meth, and like I think this is going to be a lifelong hobby, like that
Yeah. It's short
that doesn't
life.
make me feel good. That makes me feel bad, like
Yeah.
Or if someone shows me like a cell phone game and like, yeah, I just bought 10,000 rupees,
Right.
you know,
I'm gonna be
for
so good
the
at
in-game
this.
currency. I'm going to be so good at this cell phone clicker. Um, I'm not saying cell phone games are all terrible, but
I mean,
I put them as a lower quality hobby than mini painting for sure.
I'd say so. Yeah. Like, yeah. If you're on your cell phone, you're not getting anything accomplished. You might feel pretty good about yourself for a few minutes, but yeah, I can't see that going too far. That like a lifelong Candy Crusher over here. Yeah. No. No.
Do you think if you're really at the top of the does Candy Crush have a ladder? See, I don't know.
I assume it
Maybe
does.
if I knew more maybe if I knew more about it, like I'd have some more respect for that kind of thing. But like
It's possible.
maybe
I
if you're
doubt it
at
though.
like, you know, top 10 on one of the ladders for like
Right.
a more popular game, maybe you start to see something good at. Maybe you start a YouTube channel and then it all works out well for you if you're
Yeah. I mean, I have
a
seen that
top
with a
Candy
few of
Crusher.
them.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like somebody will have a YouTube channel where they're building a thing and it's but yeah, even then like the monetary output to get to that point seems a little bit detrimental to your growth as a YouTuber.
Sure. So obviously our opinions on this podcast are always subjective,
100%.
always partially ignorant, but you know, we're going to try to keep an open mind. Like we're going to play devil's advocate. Like is playing Candy Crush every day really a bad thing? I'm going to land on it's probably not great. I'm going to land on it is probably better to paint minis every day. And that's what we're
I think that's
advocating
a fair
for here.
assessment. Yeah. We are advocating.
Yeah.
We are advocators for this hobby. We like it when people come into this hobby, it's really awesome to see through our YouTube channels when people leave a comment and say, I've been watching this and you've really inspired me to get back into this thing that, I used to love or I've never tried before. And they find a lot of joy in that. And, it does make us feel good. And it might be for selfish reasons. We want to see this hobby grow so that, what we're doing is kind of given more validity, I suppose. And, having new people to talk to and like it feels good. So that's kind of a selfish part.
There are no mixed feelings when somebody tells me that they're starting to paint minis.
Yeah.
Somebody tells me that they're installing Boom Beach on their phone. Like there's some mixed feelings there, Like,
yeah.
But painting minis and it's a good hobby. We advocate for it. And there is that kind of selfish reason to want people into the hobby.
Exactly, yeah.
You can be selfish and say, I want more people in this hobby so that it's more socially acceptable,
Mm-hmm.
2, more people to talk to. Also, you've got things like you have more customers buying from companies. So there's going to be more companies selling minis, more lines of minis, more game shops. So from my point of view, growing the hobby is always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I like seeing the newness from people, that the sparkle in the eye kind of thing, it is a satisfying thing. And I, when it comes down to it, I think that we both feel like because it's really not a bad hobby to get into, right? Like it is super enjoyable and there are a lot of benefits to doing it over things like, smoking meth.
Right. And yeah, in the society that we live in, most people are on this routine of 8-ish hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, a couple hours going back and forth between work and eating. And then you got at the end of the day, or maybe the very beginning of the day, you have 1 or 2 hours to do what you want to do. See your friends, see your family, spend a little time, alone on a solo pursuit, doing what you want to do. And so that's kind of what a hobby is. What do you do with that couple hours of actually free time that you have during a day? What do you choose to do with that time? And it's limited and it's precious. And hopefully what you're choosing to do, relaxes you and centers you, gives you a sense of fulfillment, makes it seem like all the rest of the stuff that you do is worthwhile.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's essentially what a hobby is. There are all kinds of ways that you could spend your time, all kinds of hobbies that you could have. Why do we consider this one to be one of the worthwhile activities? Why? Yeah.
So let's run down a list then of, just for the sake of doing it, pros of mini painting as a use of time, and then kind of contrast that with some of the cons, because obviously every hobby has its cons. But since we're advocating for miniature painting, we might as well spell that
Yeah,
out
let's
a
get
little
into
bit.
it. Yeah, let's see what we got here.
So what are some of the pros of mini painting? Like what does it do?
All right, so let's talk about it as just a solo activity right now.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us are coming to it as YouTubers, and there is the whole internet side of things, but let's just a person in a small room with a light and a desk and some paints and a mini sitting there. It's relaxing. It's calming.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you just sit there. Hands are busy, but your mind, your mind can be active, but it can also be kind of blank and kind of processing the day and thinking about things and centering yourself and resetting and all that stuff. So I think there's definitely a meditation aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like you have to be in the right mindset. I think, I do agree. I think that it can be meditative and enjoyable as an exercise. You're problem solving as you're working through a miniature. But I do feel like there is a little bit of a danger of even taking the internet out of it is comparing yourself to other, I guess, art forms or something else, that can be a little stressful from time to time.
So what do you mean by comparing yourself to other art forms there? Like, we talking about mini painting versus knitting? Or are we talking about?
I mean, a little bit. Like, again, that validity of like, is this an art form? Is it?
Oh, sure.
Is it doing something for you? Like, I get a good amount of enjoyment from just sitting down and painting. But from time to time things creep in. A little comparison here and there to other people who paint, that kind of thing. And it's even if you see them in person, or if you're painting for a specific reason, you might have those feelings of like, I'm not good enough, or.
Well, you're getting into the cons. Casey, we started on the pros. What are you doing in the cons?
Juxtaposing this idea of that pro. I'm just laying it out there a little bit.
All right. So my position is I sit down to paint, and I don't always think about this very consciously as what I'm doing is I'm going to sit there and meditate. Like, that's never how I approach it. I go and sit down at my desk because, like, oh man, this dwarf or what, this dark Eldar, whatever, this orc, this goblin is cool, and I want to get this painted, and I've got an idea of how to do the skin, and like that's how I go and sit down at my desk.
Awesome.
But then so I kind of go there almost from like a sense of like excitement or whatever. But as I'm sitting there for a couple hours at a time, and I'm just layering the green on, and okay, I need to do a second coat of green. Let's get that second coat of green, moving that paint around with a brush, just getting it all pooled up where it needs to be. It turns into a very relaxing meditation kind of thing, without that being the intent. And so it's kind of like a kind of sneaks up on you there of being. In a state of pretty deep relaxation of just sitting there, putting that second coat of green on the goblin, just really trying to make everything smooth. It's times like this I wish I knew more about the hobby of like the Japanese sand gardens.
Oh,
seen
sure.
These where and it can be a big thing with a big rake, or it can be like a little thing with a little rake, and just moving that sand around, getting it all nice.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah,
I don't
Zen
know.
garden. Yeah.
Zen garden.
I
There
know
you
what you're
go.
talking about.
Hey, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think we used the word Zen yet, so this is good. But
Zen. Yeah. Well, what I was getting at with trying to oppose you just slightly was that of how you approach that to almost ensure that, like your mindset going into it is in such a way that, you're not worried about it. And that's a good use of your time, right? Of painting. And it's a pro is that, you can go into it knowing that you're just going to slap paint on a model because it's cool and it's fun, and that goes a long way for a lot of people. But it's really hard sometimes to wrap your mind around that. Like a lot of people have a lot of problems with that because of all of these other outside influences, But when it comes down to it, if you sit down at your desk and you paint because it's cool, then I think you're going to have a lot better time.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a hobby is. It's something that you are drawn to do normally because it's something you want to be doing.
Yeah.
And for painting a mini, I mean, because most of these minis are tied to games, or at least most of the minis that we paint, I know that a lot of people will sit down and like, okay, I need in quotes there to paint 5 Space Marines or need to get these Primaris done or whatever. And you can kind of start out like that, but then if you maybe you kind of get into it and you're layering on that ultramarine blue, and then it becomes relaxation. You may start off saying like, my hobby is the game, and I'm excited to play a game this weekend, and I want to get this squad done, and I need to sit down and paint this squad. And so there might, any hobby has little deadlines that you put on yourself and stuff, and so there might be just a little bit of stress there. But I think once you get right down into it, at least for me, I lose track of time. I just get pulled into the putting down smooth layers of paint, and very Zen-like for me. Yeah, a little Zen garden on that shoulder pad. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Zen garden on the shoulder pad. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were talking a little bit about problem solving and painting being more like a puzzle for you, and I think that's a really valid way of thinking about it too.
Yeah, like when I sit down, when I sit down to paint, it's kind of like, okay, what problem am I going to solve today? Like I want to like entertain my brain, and feel like I'm getting something done. And that's always been a big motivation for me. I mean, I did start off playing, the game. Like I started a long time ago with Warhammer. So my intent when I sat down was to paint things to get ready for a game. And that did make me paint, and it was still fun, especially starting out. But in more recent years, it's been, okay, I want to paint for, Age of Sigmar. And it's slowly transitioned into just painting for the sake of painting because I found that I enjoyed that more. But like there's a lot of problem solving that goes into that. It's picking the color scheme that you want. If you don't want it to look like the box, which most people start off with just painting the box and find that, well, the heavy metal painters are much better than I am. So I'm going to steer away from that a little bit and try and find my own voice, right? So yeah, picking a color scheme, laying down base coats, and then kind of figuring out, okay, well, what kind of paint mixes can I make, and just experiment, figure out what color is going to work best for this, what shade is going to work best for this over here. What color are those plasma coils going to be? Should it be a a contrasting color, or should it be this other kind of color? So I find a lot of enjoyment in just figuring those things out, like making those little minor decisions. Like it makes me feel good, right, about myself. And at the end of the day, if I have a finished mini, like, it feels pretty good, and I do think that is a valid way to approach painting and really have a good time. It's like people who like to play Sudoku or crossword puzzles.
Sure, absolutely. Which are other very reasonable hobbies to have.
Well, we can get into that. I think.
Okay. Well, all right. We'll save that. We'll save that one for later. But no, I 100% agree that the process of changing the paint scheme, of choosing a paint scheme, is puzzle solving.
Yeah.
You have a blank canvas, and your objective, the goal of the puzzle, is to make a cool looking mini. And what colors are you going to choose?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do what's on the box. You can't do what's on the box better than what's on the box. So
Right.
you need to, pick a different color scheme. And for me, that's where I get a lot of the enjoyment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it starts to come together. Like, oh wow, that orange there, that blue there, that was the right call. And here's where, some of the progression and satisfaction as a craft,
Mm-hmm.
as an art, as a craft, whatever you want to call it, come in, of starting to get an instinct for what colors are going to look good together, and starting to be able to really plan deeply of, okay, I'm going to undercoat this with black and do a white zenithal highlight, and then starting to really solve the puzzle of how to make this look cool, how to get color transitions,
Mm-hmm.
or just cool color combos or whatnot, get the composition looking cool. And there's definitely a lot of problem solving that goes on there. You're getting your 3D thinking going on, you're getting your aesthetics the way that you want them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are some pretty good pros, I think.
Yeah, you can be sitting there thinking hard and solving problems and achieving, or you can be sitting there just sitting there, zen. Yeah.
Yes.
Or some blend of the two, or going back and forth between them.
There's that flow, right? You get into that zone, and you're just going. I mean, I've definitely sat down, and it's been like, wow, it's 3 a.m. I should probably go to bed.
Absolutely, yeah, and
yeah.
I know that I've had times where I've turned off my problem solving skills to focus on the zen. Like if I'm really enjoying putting a certain color down, I might just stop thinking about what color is next, and just put that color down on a couple of different models. And why not do one more layer of that color? Why not? Let's go. And so sometimes I do purposely turn off the problem solving part of the task. But at other times, that's really activating, especially when that model starts to come together. There is that feeling of satisfaction and achievement and growth and all that good stuff. So good for the self-esteem, good for the mental centering, stability. We're advocates for this hobby. We're advocates for this hobby.
All right. Well, let's see.
So of course it's not all about, sitting alone at a table, though. There is the internet. We do live in in a time where there is both internet and Games Workshop games and all the other minis out there. So I guess we're staying on pros for now. We can stay on pros of what does that do, but we've talked so far about this being a solo hobby, and it is, but it also can be social if you want it to be social. There are, a multitude of Reddit pages, Facebook pages, Instagram. You can share your work with as many people and share in as many other people's work as you want to. If part of your hobby, we'll get to, whether just browsing the internet is a good hobby or not. But if you want to spend some of your hobby time looking at inspiring pieces that true professionals have made in terms of, painted minis, absolutely. Yeah, that's it's fun, it's engaging, it's good for your development, and if you choose to talk to other people, it's also social.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the last time, I got into this hobby and now that it's kind of stuck, right?
Right.
Doing the whole YouTube thing and being more social is really kept me, in this kind of awareness zone of what's going on. And, while I'm painting, I'm aware of certain things, and, it's helped me grow as a painter, right? Like being social has helped me grow as a painter. And I do think that that is important. Like, not to directly compare yourself to other people. I think that is a bad thing to do. But
Mm-hmm.
but being with other people and learning new things, if you're in a group, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to get better quicker. Having that feedback more often, like good
Yep.
feedback, and knowing what's good and bad feedback is going to help you. And I think that, Instagram and YouTube and Facebook have helped to a degree. Now, I often wonder if it's also hindered miniature painting and how much, but I think for the most part, it's been fairly helpful for a lot of people. I mean, we were just talking about how many people reach out to you on, a fairly regular basis and say, I've gotten back into this hobby, or, I've started again. Um,
Yeah.
however it ends up being for them, but they've started painting again, and they found something that they love doing, through
Eh,
the internet. It wouldn't have been otherwise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like the YouTube showing people random videos, essentially.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of comments like, I haven't even thought about this for 20 years, but this video
Uh-huh.
popped up and right back in it, which was good. So yeah, in terms of the social aspect of the hobby and the internet, you can get inspiration from other people online. You can talk to people online.
Hmm.
There's whole online communities. Some of them even encourage like hanging out in Discord, like
Hmm.
voice Discord, like talking to each other while you're painting or whatnot.
Yeah.
Have you ever done anything like that?
Never anything so specific as like hanging out in a voice chat wall painting,
Okay.
but I've taken some classes with people. And
Like in person
yeah, in
or
person.
online? Okay.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, like I've done actually at the Las Vegas Open, that the big
Mm.
Warhammer tournament, a few months ago. I hung out with Peachy for like 4 hours. Peachy of Warhammer Community,
He did a
that
4 hour
everybody knows.
class?
No,
Tell me about this.
no. So okay, LVO was it was fun, right? I'm just gonna leave that right there, just hanging. It was not put together very well, and a lot of that had to do with the hobby side of things. They were very, very on top of things for the tournament side, right?
Mm.
I mean, then that's mostly what it is. Everyone was there for that. And, I wasn't there to play, but I was there to hobby and hang out with people.
Hmm.
So, social aspect of sitting and painting with other people. And I did that for 3 days straight. But the first day I was there, I was there with a friend. We went up to the 26th floor of the hotel that wasn't advertised as being a thing.
What floor was the tournament on?
Floor number one.
Okay, so you were at floor
Yeah,
26. All
in
right.
a convention center, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, there's some hobby rooms and some stuff," and then it was like we had to ask people where the classes were taking place, because I had signed up to take a class, um, and we go up there and like there's Peachy sitting in this very large room, kind of by himself,
All
and
alone?
kind of all alone, just peeking
There
in
were
the
no
corner.
other nerds in the room.
No, there were a handful on the complete opposite side. It's a very large room, um,
Were they
and they
there
were
to,
taking
were
a
they there?
class.
Okay, so they were there for a separate thing.
They were there. Yeah, they were there for a separate class,
Okay.
which I ended up taking later. But there's Peachy sitting in a corner by himself, and there's like a line of tables, like probably 40 feet of tables and chairs lined up for his classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it felt kind of sad. And I went on to the LVO site and I purchased a class, a Games Workshop class, and it was for painting some Sigmarines, right? Like
Okay.
that was the class. So then me and my friend go up there and it's just us, and Peachy's like, "Are you here for the class?" And we're like, "Oh yeah." Yeah. He's like, "All right, sit down. I'm gonna grab some of these Primaris Marines." It's like, "Oh, well, okay, Primaris Marines. Like that's not what the class is about." He's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, yeah, it says this on the website. And he's like, oh my God, like they've completely messed up his schedules online. They didn't tell people that he was even there. And so he's been sitting up there like basically by himself since he got to Vegas. So yeah, we sat down with him and uh chatted for about 4 hours.
Okay, so on the
Yeah.
social aspect, is Peachy painting alone happier or less happy than Peachy painting with friends?
I'd say that Peachy was much happier painting with friends.
Now see, I think that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt so bad for him. He even offered us some of his nice British candy.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. No, it was pretty awesome though. Like it was weird, to sit down and just hang out with him for a while. But, we started painting through our not Sig Marines. They were Primaris Marines because apparently that class was, for a different day. But it was definitely um a better experience painting, with someone. And in general, when I've done that, it's always a better experience because you get to talk about things. You can
Yeah.
ask questions. Like if someone's a better painter, then you can say, hey, like how do you do this thing? And you will learn faster. And I mean, it's more fun.
So did Peachy
That
teach you anything, or were you just hanging out?
yeah, well,
Did you
it was
teach Peachy anything?
no, I don't
Okay.
think so.
All right.
But we were yeah, it was a class on speed painting, Primaris Marines, and it was mainly using contrast paints. So he did kind of teach me something actually. So he's like a huge proponent of dry brushing. And if you've never listened to, the Age of Sigmar podcast, he's got a couple episodes on there. And he talks about, himself growing up and his dad being a miniature painter and only dry brushing almost exclusively, which is a very strange thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, he had some cool insights on dry brushing. He was showing me like, okay, well, here's how you normally load your brush. That's cool, whatever. You wipe it off on a piece of cardboard, not on a piece of, like kitchen cloth, whatever.
Okay.
Which was different for me, and he had some reasons behind that, like different moisture levels get taken away and whatever. But then he also reintroduced some water into his dry brush, which is very strange, but it totally worked. Like he just
Okay.
took the corner of the dry brush and just touched it in the water. And it was just enough, like in this area to make the dry brushing not look dry,
Huh.
but it wasn't wet brushing either. So it was this weird kind of in between of you're still dry brushing, but then just enough moisture on one side of the brush is smoothing out that dry brushing that it looks better than if you just did it traditionally.
Huh,
So yeah,
fascinating.
he
Yeah.
definitely taught me that. That was very interesting. But yeah, it did feel a little bad for him. I said hi to him a bunch of times at the convention because he was kind of wandering around by himself. It was like he'd see me and my friend, he'd go, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, yeah, we're those two guys. So it was an interesting experience for sure. But he's a nice guy, and it was nice to sit down and paint with him and talk. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for the social aspect of painting
Yeah.
and sitting
Yeah.
together.
No, the kind of the experience of sitting down with other people and painting and talking whenever you feel like I've had fun doing it.
Mhm.
And this isn't something that I've done as much as maybe I'd like to. Like, I think it'd be cool if more stores had painting days or paint and take days.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. As it is, kind of most of my experience with that kind of setting has been either at a class or a convention
Mhm.
of yeah, there's a scheduled event where people are going to sit around this table and paint. At Gen Con, there's a speed painting competition, which is kind of like that. 45 minutes, a mini, and there's some paints in front of you, and you're sitting next to other people, and you're going to town.
Yeah.
And but also there's like paint and take events, which
Mhm.
I actually really enjoy. Just going down, there's some cheap, poorly primed mini, a couple of paints, sit down next to maybe you're with a friend at the convention or whatever, but then there's a bunch of strangers around you and just chatting and hanging out. And
Yeah.
it's actually, I mean, it's really conducive to that because the actual hobby just involves like sitting still and keeping your hands busy, plenty of time for talking and getting to know each other. And so like if you can get the little bit of organization it takes to actually get a few people around a table with some paintbrushes in their hands, like I think it can be a really great social activity.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm conscious of the fact that most people do not do this.
That's true.
That most painting takes place, you know, alone in your hobby den and on your kitchen table or whatever. But it definitely can be pretty social.
Yeah, there's an interesting aspect to this hobby.
Or it's an option. It's an option to be social.
Going outside, optional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you taken any classes, or do you just do mostly paint?
I took one with Sam Lenz, and then I took another quick one at Gen Con last year. And they can be pretty informative. Yeah. The instructor has some little curriculum of techniques that they want to show you on a model or products that they want to make sure that you try on a model. And then they're there to give critique and suggestions and that sort of stuff. And I found them to be useful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely, I think that, I mean, I agree with you. I've taken a couple of classes too. And they've both been pretty helpful. I mean, the one with PG was more hanging out.
Yeah.
But that definitely was beneficial in itself. Yeah. And I took another one with CK Studios at the same convention and learned quite a bit from that. Did you know that Liquitex white ink, I know we're both pretty huge users and proponents of using white ink to do zenithals.
I like Liquitex white ink.
Right.
Yeah. Continue.
Have you used any other white ink, or have you noticed a difference?
I have. I've used the FW Dollar Rounty stuff.
Yeah.
And it spottier, chunkier.
It's flat out garbage. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah.
No, that's fine.
There was a noticeable difference between that and Liquitex ink.
Yeah.
And I'm always a little bit hesitant at least to say that something is garbage. Like I understand that there's different batches of this stuff, and maybe this was frozen when it was in a truck across Manitoba or something. Like or maybe a bottle's been sitting on the shelf for 5 years and is not what it once was.
Right. Yeah.
But the bottle of FW white ink that I have is garbage for zenithal highlights compared to the now like 3 different bottles of Liquitex white ink that I've used.
Well, the main topic starting off in this class that I was taking was literally do not buy FW white ink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
because it will ruin your day. And like it has ruined my day many times. And I did not even realize. I thought it was me this for like a long time, for real, that this particular white ink was like, I'm just doing something wrong. I can't thin it right. It's ink. It should just work. No, it just does not work. Like Liquitex or apparently Vallejo makes a white ink that's like literally the best. But yeah, like I went out as soon as I got home and I bought that Liquitex white ink and it like changed my life.
Yeah. If anyone's not sure what we're talking about right now, we're talking about an airbrush technique where you start with a dark coat like black as the primer on a mini, and then you dust it from above with white ink to get, transitions between white highlights and dark underneath. So, and
traditionally called a zenithal highlight.
Yeah. And you can do that with just spray cans, but it is nowhere near as pretty as if you do it with an airbrush and either Vallejo white ink apparently or Liquitex white ink. But yeah, I've found that you load up your airbrush with Liquitex white ink and you just do some gentle mistings over the top, and you get a really awesome kind of black and white mini that someday I will find a use for just not even doing anything else to the Mini, just having it be
Yeah.
black and white like that.
I've thought
Someday the
about that.
situation will arise. Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely thought about doing that, like taking an entire army,
Mm-hmm.
going through it and just doing that and going, yes, like this is an awesome like grayscale army, because it does look really cool. Like it
Yep.
has a very distinct look to it. And, you add color to that and obviously it pops pretty good, but it does look really cool and it would be fun to try that for, an army of some sorts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or terrain, or having statues on the side of a street, or who knows?
Yeah.
Like there's a situation where that looks cool. And anyway, we like to start our paint jobs with a zenithal highlight, so that one, it picks up really well on the camera. Like before you even put down your first bit of brushwork paint, like the zenithal highlight really picks up well on the camera, and you can see all the details on the Mini. But it also just in person, our eyes, we can see what's going on, and and it helps us think about how we're going to paint the thing. So, you're saying that like just talking to other people, just silly little things like this brand, not this brand, and of course sometimes those loyalties are foolish, and that's a whole other episode. But
there are the weird loyalty issues, but specifically, I mean, because when I was in the class, it was like we're only using this ink because this works, and we didn't go into the reasons why the other one worked, but it doesn't, like that De La Rowney stuff just didn't, and that's really what it comes down to, is like it has nothing to do with loyalty in that case, right? It just what works for your painting.
Yeah. Someday we'll have a real talk about brand loyalty and Games Workshop paints and all that
what's
stuff.
Better, what's not,
let's save that one. Like
we will. Yes.
Please subscribe to this podcast. You can.
Yeah, if you want to hear us crap talk on. No, not really.
I was trying to get them subscribed before we crap talked on various brands of paint. Right. But along with this, I do actually really like some of the FW colors, just not their titanium white.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that comes with experience, is that, every line of paint has strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes that's like color by color strengths and weaknesses. Like this green.
You do have to learn each color, right? How it mixes, how it affects other things, like what happens, because not all mixes are scientifically sound, if you know what I mean. Like there are more than one type of pigment.
Oh yeah.
In that paint. So like there are a lot of different combinations and things that can happen. And obviously sitting around a table with people who are experienced, you're going to pick up on some of that stuff. And I do think that's really important. I mean, there's a lot to be said about surrounding yourself with people like who are better at doing the thing you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, if you're going to go somewhere and be somewhere and learn things, like you need to make sure that you are, I guess for the lack of a better term, you are the dumbest person in the room.
That's a very valid thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, surround yourself with people who know more than you do and always be learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And of course, the learning and the growth is all something that we value about the hobby too, because they're, in some ways, it's very easy to pick up. It is very easy to do a paint and take for a Primaris Intercessor Marine and throw a coat of blue contrast paint on or whatever. Yep. So the entry is very simple, but of course it's very hard to master. And when you do look at the Instagram profiles for the masters and see what you can do on these tiny little things, that this really can be a lifelong hobby, and you can continue to grow and learn year after year after year. And there is such a high ceiling on this if you want there to be. But on the other hand, within a month you can be certainly painting models that you think are cool and are happy to play a game with or put on your shelf or whatever. Yeah. But at the same time, there is such a high ceiling if you really want to learn how to paint glistening muscles or
That's one of my favorite things, and not the glistening muscles thing, although I
Sometimes.
appreciate a good glistening muscled model, that new Warcry set with that barbarian dude, like fun to paint, whatever. I'm getting off track. That ceiling of learning, right? Like it is seemingly never ending, and even people who we do consider to be at the absolute top of the field, are still learning.
Yes.
And I love that aspect. Like that's something that I really liked about playing guitar. Is that there isn't a ceiling.
You can always get better. I'm trying to think of like what hobbies though you can kind of max out, and I'm not sure that you necessarily can on all of them. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of something that would make sense.
I don't know.
Watching
World,
TV, you can max out on being
yeah,
good at that.
yeah. That's a good point. I kind of have that scribbled down as like maybe not a great hobby is watching TV.
What are some bad hobbies then?
You want to jump into it? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, might as well
talk about some other hobbies. So, we were talking about a hobby is what you do with your like 1 or maybe 2 hours of free time during a day, and there are good uses and bad uses of that, medium uses. I like to think about it as, kind of all the different aspects of health. Like, is it social health, mental health, financial health, physical, is it doing anything good for you? And so painting, we talked about being relaxing. It can be social if you want it to be. There are ways to paint in a financially responsible way where painting is keeping you from spending money on other things. And so painting can be pretty good in terms of health and hobbies and stuff. Yeah. But if you're just thinking about like, what do most people do with that extra hour or two? I think just on average, most people watch TV with their free time. And maybe that's Netflix or whatever it happens to be, cable news or Netflix or who knows. But I think probably the most popular pastime for winding down at the end of the day is watching an hour or 2 or 4 of TV. And on the whole, I think that is a bad use of time. Unless
I would agree.
Yeah. There's caveats there. Yeah. So, some movies and TV shows I think are socially useful to watch. I don't watch sports, but I think it would actually be good for my health to at least watch the Super Bowl every year, so that the next day at work or whatever, like when someone's talking about did you
see the big game?
Right. Just the ability to.
John, I didn't.
I never do. You know this.
You know this. That is a valid way to go.
Right.
Just tell him to. Yeah.
But. Oh man. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. Like while we're on nerd things, and then plus the Marvel movies. Like if we are living in kind of a nerd social realm, like there are some things that you are expected to see because people will constantly be making references to them. And I think there comes a point where if you are missing so many references that people in your social circle are making, like it might be worth it for you to sit and watch TV for several evenings to catch up on the the big ones.
Maybe not watch the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, but the standard versions.
You should know who Gimli is. Yeah.
Right. You should. Like when some store clerk walks by you with, a bunch of carts and yells at you, "You shall not pass." You should probably know why.
Yeah.
That he's not being mean. He's being fun. And
he's not being as weird as you think he is, maybe.
Exactly.
Like you're the weirdo in this situation.
Right. You're the weirdo.
So I actually think that at least to a degree, it's okay for everyone to have watching TV as like part of their hobby.
Part of. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes you can multitask that. Sometimes you can't.
If you're not listening to this podcast on YouTube or Apple, or any other podcast areas, then you can definitely throw on some Netflix and paint.
Right. And of course, then there's the question of, can you multitask painting and watching TV? And I think it very much depends on what that TV is.
Yeah.
A sitcom or something like that, especially if you've already seen it before, absolutely can be on in the background as noise.
Right. No, like kind of having that mental picture going.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah,
actually having to look at it.
because you know what's going on. The audio is enough to keep you going on what Jim and Pam are up to on The Office there. You know,
Same old garbage.
right. But again, like, I don't advocate for you to sit down with a beer at the end of the day and do nothing else except watch The Office for the 10th time.
Right.
I mean, hey, do it if that's what makes you happy. Do it. But if we are trying to semi-objectively, mostly subjectively rank hobbies here, I don't think that's a great use of your time.
Yeah, I mean, I like The Office. I've probably watched it 3 times, but
yeah,
2.5 of those times were definitely not actually looking at the screen.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
that is a good time. Just while you're doing something else. Yeah.
Yep. Reruns of most English-speaking TV shows you could probably do that with. Yeah.
Can't watch Narcos while you're painting.
Cannot watch Narcos while you're painting. I've been trying recently, and my Spanish just isn't good enough. Like,
they're headed to the bathroom, I think.
I wonder if I spent just years listening to Narcos, if I'd get there. Like, if that is
I think
actually a
eventually
reasonable way to. So I took a little bit of Spanish in school, but I still need those subtitles. I very much need those subtitles. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. It's an interesting experiment, though. I mean, so maybe for the next year, you just put on Narcos. You don't look at it. I mean, there might be some context things that you might have to look at it for, but, you know, maybe turn off the subtitles completely and then just see if that somehow translates. See where you get. Maybe it's a good experiment. We'll keep up with this. So you might as well subscribe now.
I still don't know Spanish.
6 months later, why?
This was a terrible use of my time. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Bad hobby.
So yeah, we want to talk about some other hobbies here. This whole podcast isn't about TV.
No. I mean, I think we touched on some cell phone games and why they're probably bad. We can get to dirt biking. I like that.
Yeah.
I dirt bike quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, like
do you think dirt biking is a good hobby?
I think it is one of the best hobbies, Brent. The most fun and enjoyable times that you can have outside. The smell of gasoline and that exhaust covered I don't know. There's something about that.
Cons. All right, continue.
In the cons, you're not a huge fan of dirt biking or
look. Why don't you take the pros? I'll take the cons on this one.
Okay, so the pros of dirt biking is it gets your heart rate up in multiple ways. There's some adrenaline. There's definitely that rush of kind of that extreme sport, especially and it's controllable. You can go slow, you can go fast, you can jump high or not at all. It's a good exercise, honestly. Like, you know, I can go around a track or, you know, go up a mountain. It puts you in places, you know, where hiking can take you, but a lot faster.
Okay.
There's a social aspect to it of going out with other people, a problem solving aspect or a mechanical aspect of having to work on or fix or do different things. Like, I got really good at small engine repair, so much that it's actually gotten me jobs before, which I find fascinating and very useful as a skill. And overall, it's just, I don't know, you're going 70 miles an hour on a dirt road on 2 wheels, and yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
Okay.
What are the cons, Brent?
Well,
I don't see any cons here.
Actually, you did a pretty good job on the pros. You got me second guessing this here, but
okay, all right.
The 70 miles per hour on a dirt road with or without jumps, I'm going to put that as a con in my book. Yeah.
More jumps is a pro. So it's a pro.
Yeah, I haven't actually ever done dirt biking. I've been on an ATV like a couple of times in my life, and I hated it. It was frightening. And we were not even going like that fast, but it was frightening. I was just like,
were you going like up some sketchy hills or something?
oh,
or?
I mean, it was in the woods. Like they're pretty cool, like dirt paths and stuff. But
were there bears? I could see that.
I mean, there were. I couldn't see any. Like, if so, that was kind of a gator, like 2-person ATV, and I was sitting on the back trying to hang on, and like no control over. So part of it was that I did not have any control over the speed
that
or
actually
direction.
Could have had to do a lot with it, yeah.
You know, and whether or not you trust the person like actually driving plays a big role.
Was it a friend or family member?
Yes, family member.
Okay. See, I wouldn't trust my family members to drive me around on an ATV. That could have been it. You should have had a friend.
Okay. Well, I'm going to write that down for in case I ever get on an ATV again in my life.
Get back.
Yeah.
Right.
but no, for me, I was thinking like, okay, there's a 95% chance I survive the next like half an hour. 5% chance. Well, I guess I could still survive, but be horribly injured. So we got to calculate that in.
There's naming involved at times. I mean, I've almost broken limbs. Like I've gone with my dad and he's broken limbs. I mean, it's, it's dangerous. Can be. You wear a helmet, pads,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. For me, there's other ways to get adrenaline rushes that are less likely to result in
bodily harm,
broken bones, concussions.
I don't know. That's for me. There's an exciting part about that, like that possibility of bodily harm. Like, I mean, I've been pretty injured before, but I don't know. It's like there's that sense of pride for some weird reason of like I jacked my leg up so bad once, and I took pictures of that. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Check it out. Like I jacked up. This is really painful. But it's, I don't know. There's something about scars, right? Getting scars.
Okay. Yeah.
Living life.
Yeah. We just have different types of scars. That's all. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Some are emotional. Some are on the outside.
Yeah. Sometime I'll show you the like chemical explosion where I still have bits of beaker in me. You know. Like,
okay. That I'm gonna write that down right now. I'm just gonna write that down.
Make Brent show me. Yeah.
Yeah. We should have a segment, Science with Brent.
Yeah. Someday. We can do a segment on that, sure.
I think it's fascinating, and I also moreover think it's fascinating that you have a PhD in, what is it specifically? Chemical engineering?
Organic chemistry.
Organic chemistry. Yeah. Okay. Like I think you've talked about that before on your channel, but honestly, when it comes down to it, that is a bit mind-blowing. It's not easy to do that.
Yeah, I just find it interesting, like what everybody brings to their channel and the hobby. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think like third spaces is a whole separate episode, but in this hobby, it really is a third space where everybody comes together to paint minis, but where everybody is coming from is very different. And kind of in the world, in the world of painting minis, we're all equal, except for some people are really good at it. But everyone is welcome to come sit around and talk about Space Marines and all that stuff. And so
it is the great equalizer.
Yeah, absolutely. And many hobbies are like that, but there's the barber shop or the bar or the game store are all, or like the gym even, are all third spaces where people come together. It doesn't matter what else they've done in their lives, but right now everybody's here to play tabletop games or what have you.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
We'll write that down. That definitely is like a whole other I like topic. That a lot. But I do find it fascinating, like, because everybody is coming in with different experiences and different skills. It is always fascinating. Like, we're doing this podcast and you are good at setting this up because you've been in a band for 15 years, which is like, okay, I haven't been in a band for 15 years. Like my experiences are completely different, and I bring different skills to the hobby, and so I have more of a strength in terms of thinking about like what a pigment actually is, or like I
Yeah.
have, or what a glue is actually doing. So I have at least a little bit of insight into how the resin printer is hardening the resin, or any of that
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
Yeah.
um, and
I mean, and that is a fascinating
right,
angle, honestly, and I
sure.
obviously attributes to the success you've had so far on YouTube.
Well,
Speaking of dirt bikes,
yeah. Is now the time to be vacuuming? Are you serious? We talked about this.
oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah, this idea of the hobby being a third space is, I think it's definitely a whole podcast episode all on its own.
hmm
But, if you go to a game store and you play a game with somebody, likely the person you're playing with spent their week doing something very different than what you spent your week doing.
Yeah.
Different professions, different walks of life. But there, everybody all is like talking about whether or not Magnus did anything wrong. It
Right.
gives you a lot of commonality, and it's really great to bring people together like that.
Yeah.
And I think many hobbies do the same thing as
hmm
acting as that third space, bringing tons of different people together. But it's great that the hobby does do that. Lets us talk with each other, find common interests, and then you do get someone whose job is a woodworker, and they can
hmm
teach you about, like, I don't know, the good sandpaper, or how to make a plinth for your minis, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
And you get you get somebody who's a software engineer who figures out how to make a cool app to, I don't know, keep track of the score, or whatever they
Right. Yeah.
uh, whatever your profession is, or your other hobbies, or your other interests. Absolutely, there are ways to make them useful
hmm
in this hobby, because there really are a lot of facets to this hobby other than just the act of putting paint down on a mini.
Yeah.
Um, if you do have a prior experience in the field of art or whatever, yeah, absolutely, that's a leg up. But it's not all about that. There are all kinds of different
Right.
problem solving and hand skills and social skills can be involved in this hobby, and
hmm
it's kind of cool the way it all comes together sometimes. So, yes, this can be a social hobby. Absolutely, you can spend your time sitting alone in a zen-like state before bed, but there is absolutely the outlet for this to be social. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think having that social interaction and having the hobby be that equalizer between, walks of life, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I suppose it's a personal belief. I don't know if you share this, but um, doing life with other people, like living your life with other people, and not necessarily having them be people that like all the same things that you do, it creates, a sense of community and well-roundedness in a
Mm-hmm.
person. You know, you can go to someone who sees something completely differently from you, and bond over a board game, essentially. Like, we're playing these tabletop games, and we might have different opinions about different things, but you see people for being people and not their opinions, on the internet or political views or whatever it is. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that makes a big difference in having a fulfilled life.
I'd
And
agree with that.
yeah, and okay, and this hobby is something that you can do for your entire life, theoretically. And I think we've both chosen this hobby to be advocates of it for that reason in particular, is that you can do this for a long time, and there are a lot of good reasons to do it.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. Um, and I've been thinking about this, that this is one of the hobbies that I have had for the longest period of time. And, obviously breaks in between there.
Sure.
But I am more and more thinking about this as a lifelong hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about the fact that there is this skill progression, that you can continue to get better and better and better and still be nowhere near the end of painting minis.
Yeah.
There's so many things to paint. There's so much to learn. And so that it can absolutely keep you busy for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And also in terms of like the physical requirements of the hobby,
Mm-hmm.
if your eyes, even with really thick glasses, can be corrected to be able to see the mini, like if your eyes basically work, and if if your hands are not too shaky,
Mm-hmm.
or you can find a way to brace your hands, as long as your hands and your eyes pretty much work,
Yeah.
you can keep at this forever.
Yeah.
And that's not the same for all hobbies. If you were into sports or something as a younger man, like that,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it would be wise to give some of those up or to transition into lower impact kind of stuff.
Yeah, dirt biking is a long-term hobby. It's not the best.
I mean, have you said that you've gone dirt biking with your dad before? Like,
yes,
okay.
and that is true.
I mean, as we age, I guess the reflexes, you break easier, you heal slower, slower reflexes also, which is probably not great.
There's some times when, you have to make some decisions. Like, am I going to fall 20 feet or into a rock? You have to pick.
Right. I don't think a lot of people do rugby for, into their 60s or whatnot, but you can absolutely be painting for as long as you want to.
Yes.
And something else I've found actually is that it's a little bit like riding a bike, where I have found, I took a big long break, pretty much my 20s. I didn't do any painting is kind of the story for me. And I got back to it, and if anything, I was better when I came back to it. Like, not only had I not lost skill, I feel like I don't even know why. Maybe it's just better products on the market, or just a more mature mind or something. But I was actually felt like okay. But it's not a thing where you lose skill. Maybe the product line changes up a little bit, and you got to reorient yourself to what's going on. But I think it's a hobby that's easy to come back to. There's not a lot of demands physically that are going to prevent you from coming back, and also it stores pretty easily unless you have a massive collection of minis. Like, a decent sized box can fit a lot of paints and some paintbrushes and some minis, and put that in your. I'm trying to think. I don't want to recommend people put it in their attic. Like, stuff dries out in a hot attic, but like in a cool, dry garage, stores easy, the skill stays there, and it something you can get fulfillment out of year after year if that's what you want to do. So, lots of reasons to advocate for painting minis. That's the point of today, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just realizing that we didn't talk about the cons of mini painting, and obviously that's because neither of us think that's too important. Neither of us really focus on those things, but I suppose we should mention them.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, okay.
What do we got?
In today's day and age, posting things on the internet can be a very bad thing.
Risky, you mean?
Risky in that you might get some feedback that you're not necessarily prepared for. So, while the hobby itself might not be an exact con, but like if you're sharing your work with other people or you're taking it somewhere, you might hear some words of not very encouraging, speech.
So you have a backstory that I don't have, Casey.
Yeah.
So you've told me before that like you posted minis online as a young man, and you got ripped to shred by some mean nerds.
Some mean nerds.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, when I was younger, 11 years old, 12 years old, something around there, I started painting, and the internet was a pretty young thing. There were forums, mostly text-based, but then there were some that started to have pictures, up. So I'd share my work, and for the most part, just get completely torn apart and ripped to shreds by, you know, internet trolls. But I don't even know if they were trolls. It was just everyone on the forums like, why are you here? You know, you shouldn't even be painting at all. Yeah, like real bad things. And especially, you know, for a young child to hear. Um, and I tried to endure that for a while. I really wanted to get better at painting and I wanted to play, and I was having a lot of fun, and that pretty much killed it for me. Um,
Yeah.
so even today, where there might be a lot of pros in posting your work online and getting feedback, I think that there are a lot of cons that come with that, and that you don't know who is looking and who will be posting.
Well, there's some risk there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the same vein as this can be good for your self-esteem of, you know, painting a mini and feeling good about it, feeling accomplished. There is the risk that either someone will tell you that it's terrible, or you realize for yourself that it's terrible, or come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And so there is the risk of failure, whether you actually did fail or whether someone's just being mean and telling you failed. But as a side note, being a troll on the internet and posting mean things on the internet, not a good use of anybody's time. Like that's
not a good hobby.
That is not a good hobby. Like, it's not good for you. It's not good for anyone reading what you write. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't have stupid arguments on the internet. Don't be mean
it
on
kills
the internet.
Me every time,
yeah.
Man. Like when people are arguing with complete strangers, like especially people I know, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you're not going to change their mind. Like, why?
Impossible. Yeah.
It's a bad idea. It's a bad pastime.
Yeah. So I guess there can be some feel bads if you are trying to paint the Space Marine on the box and it looks like nothing like the Space Marine on the box, and then you know, you go to the internet for validation and people tell you that this looks so much worse than the Space Marine on the box. So
yes.
I mean, that's, you know, this kind of frustration can be true in any hobby, and any hobby can have trolls telling you that you're worthless and wasting your time and all that. So you know, don't worry about it, Casey. Chin up. Like, those.
It only took 20 years. I'm way past that. I don't cry after reading YouTube comments at all.
Okay, so one con is internet strangers can tell you you're terrible and you can quit the hobby for 20 years is a potential con. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like, I was young, right? And not really understanding a lot of things about life. Like, that's gonna really not be good for you.
Yeah, we weren't used to what an internet troll was at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was like pre Y2K. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right, I forgive you for.
You forgive me?
You. Yeah.
Where were you in 1999?
It wasn't me.
Yeah.
Casey, I was that internet nerd.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Wait a second.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so let's see. What else? Do you have anything to say about, like, the coolness or the social acceptability of painting goblins versus dirt biking? Like, I would say that one of those factor. like yeah, if you go into a random bar in America and someone says, like, hey, what'd you do today? And one Casey says, I went dirt biking, and the other Casey says, I painted some Gloomspite Gits for my Age of Sigmar army. What's that? It's kind of like, well, do you know what Dungeons and Dragons is? No.
It's like that.
So are there any social cons?
I mean, obviously it depends on where you're going, right? If you're at a hobby shop, then no, there aren't any. But if you're at a bar, I mean, honestly, I think it comes down to how interesting can you be while talking about it? Because even right now, like, I can go dirt biking, sure, and I can tell someone that, and like in the area that I live in, people go, okay, that's cool, you know, like you see it all the time. But if I tell someone, okay, like I got a haircut right the other day.
Oh yeah, not a bar, but the barber. Yeah,
The
okay.
barber.
The barber
Yes.
making conversation with you. Yeah,
Yes,
this is the
and I
situation.
was telling them like, because they're asking, oh, so what do you do and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, I paint toy soldiers for the internet, and that's almost always my go-to. And then it's like, excuse me, and it's like interest level is peaked, right? So
2% chance they say
cases,
like 2% chance they say Warhammer, or the 98%
right, that
chance
very
that you get
small
that response.
percent chance. Yes, exactly. No, I had no idea what it was, but was very interested. And I do think that there is an interest level there that when you say it a specific way, like if you have that
Yeah.
pre-planned script in your head, yeah, like it can be something that people really like weirdly admire.
Yeah.
And maybe that's coming from um having a YouTube channel more than actually painting. But I mean, I don't start with necessarily like, oh yeah, I'm on YouTube, and they go, oh, what is it, like box openings? Like, no, I paint soldiers. No, it's like
Sometimes I do box openings.
yeah, occasionally, yes, I do actually.
No, I like that. Like,
Yeah.
if you just go at it with the right attitude and have that
Yeah.
confidence to tell the barber or the person at the bar or whatever. Yeah, the barber's a great example, by the way. I love that.
Yeah. It is one of my favorite things to tell people, because inevitably, a conversation starter is, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, exactly.
So coming at it like I'm waiting for someone to ask, because I just want to see the look on their face.
Gotta have that prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you go in it with the confidence and the, hey, this is what I love to do, it doesn't have to be negative. It's only negative
Right.
if you think about it that way. Like,
it's only negative if you come at it like, I paint pants.
Yeah, this isn't high school unless you literally are in high school right now.
Yeah.
and even then, like, have confidence in what you're doing, and I think that gets over the nerd stigma. And also I think, again, part of this is maturity and our age and our stage in life, but partially it is like the world changing. Like, this stuff is not as closeted as it used to be. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Avengers, the last one, what is it, Endgame, is, I think it just got to number 1. Like on the
all-time movie ever.
All-time movie ever.
Yeah.
I think it just passed Avatar.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's a movie I haven't seen yet, and should, for socially important reasons.
Yeah.
I
think so. And on that note, Brent, go watch Avengers Endgame.
Okay, I'll write that down. Doing? I'll write that down. Yeah. We'll get there. I watched the first one. Not the first Avengers. I did watch the first Avengers, but I saw the one right before Endgame, whatever that was called. Infinity War? Possibly Infinity War.
Yeah.
And
the one that was the massive cliffhanger. You didn't want to see how that resolved?
It does. Look, I didn't care. Do you know what my takeaway? My takeaway from that movie was the lady villain with like the cool face paint.
Yeah.
Like basically like a dark elf witch with like the cool face paint. And like my takeaway from that movie was like, I gotta learn to paint like sweet makeup on my figures. Like, that was my takeaway. Like, oh, that was sweet. Like, you got the eyes, but then you have like the horizontal stripe like across the eyes. Like, it's not a...
I've seen that. They do like a nice bright blue stripe across.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, like that would work really well in like blue or burgundy, and that's something I gotta look into. But
that's a good call.
Yeah, it was a great movie, Casey. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh,
like, oh no, the third Spider-Man in the last 10 years disappeared. They'll never make another Spider-Man movie.
I know, right?
Spoilers, they made more Spider-Man movies.
They did. Oh man.
But yes, no, I Not to get too far on that, but yes, there are culturally important TV shows and movies that you should get around to watching someday.
Right.
Like, sometime after I watch the Princess Diaries all the way through, I'll get around to Avengers Endgame, and then I'll really know what's going on when people talk to me. Yeah.
Life will be complete. Oh my god.
But yeah, no, there. Nerd culture or nerd acceptance or whatever it is definitely has made progress in the last years, and Marvel has been a big part of it. I think Stranger Things, like opening with a scene of kids having fun playing D&D, and even like throughout the series they've made that a theme, is that like what these kids like to do is play D&D. Like even in like season 3 it was a big sub theme. And yeah, this stuff is less closeted than it used to be.
Yeah.
And if you confidently like tell people like, yeah, I painted this cool mini last night. Oh, you watch TV? Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Right.
That's cool. Like,
it does make a difference. It does.
Yeah.
Like coming at it with a confidence and you know, it's like knowing that, hey, this is what I like to do. It is more socially acceptable to just say what you like to do, and you know, expect that people aren't gonna like give you a hard time for it.
Oh, you watched The Bachelorette last night? How'd that turn out?
Okay, I do have a problem with that. Like,
oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know it.
and then there's like just garbage, right? Like unless you've made a drinking game out of this thing, like, and that's a whole other thing. Like,
then that's different. Yeah,
we can't. If you watch The Bachelorette, I'm sorry.
I mean, if you just have it on the background while you're painting, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Because in your mind's eye, you see what's going on here.
Yeah.
Jimmy
messed up. I don't know. I've never watched The Bachelor.
I have not either.
One episode, we'll just we'll pretend. We'll ad lib.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something with roses, something else. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We could definitely do this. No problem.
Oh yeah. We got this. So, hey, if you watch The Bachelorette, you can visit us on YouTube and let us know in the comments.
Yeah. So, like I said, I love having podcasts in my ears while I'm working. But this is going to be available both on YouTube, Paint Bravely, the podcast YouTube channel. Yep. And also wherever podcasts are downloadable on your phone.
Absolutely.
So I'll be checking in with this YouTube podcast just to keep the comment section active and to see what people are liking and to get a little community started that way. But I'm in terms of me consuming this thing, it's going to be on the phone for me. I'm going to be listening to Casey's edits while I'm painting and stuff. So highly recommended. If us babbling along keeps you painting, awesome. That one of our poorly thought out goals here is to keep you painting. So, yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there any other cons to this whole mini painting, or is that?
You know,
it's all gravy. It's all good.
It's really hard to come up with cons because I think we both like it so much. Like, sure, there's the you're too closeted. You're only painting for yourself and never talking about it or doing anything with anyone. You're, stuck away, never going outside.
The not going out. You can paint outside. I actually need to test that more often, but I think you can paint outside.
I have a really good idea for that, for a video.
Okay.
That I'm going to be doing.
Oh yeah. All right. I'll save that for later then.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you all that. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, there's kind of like the financial health, like, are you spending too much money on minis? And that's
true.
That's a whole separate thing, but like you can spend too much money on any hobby that you want. Like,
absolutely.
You can buy all the jewels in the Candy Crush Farmville simulator. You can
not have a physical object in return.
Right. If you go golfing every year, you can buy a new set of titanium whatevers. Like,
sure. Whatever they use.
Yeah, I don't know if dirt bikes are expensive, but I assume they cost money. Like, yeah.
Although, like anything, like anything you can get on eBay, you can find it for cheaper.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I mean, I
Pop
bought
that bit in
plenty.
the ultrasonic cleaner, and
Yeah, 100%. Spark
Good
plug
as
in the
new.
ultrasonic cleaner. All good.
That works, right? Does
I
that
have
work?
no idea.
Okay.
I would never do that. That seems dangerous.
What's the worst that happens? Your engine doesn't start?
Yeah, I mean, you could go spend another $250 on a new spark plug, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Usually use a sandblaster to get that carbon off. Yeah, a little bit. LA's totally awesome. Can't fix everything, or can it?
Yeah. I guess you're sitting down. Most people paint sitting down, and like maybe there's like a posture, and
There are some posture issues. Yeah.
it's not time spent being active, but if you're doing it kind of like, end of the day, getting close to bedtime, like it's not a bad thing to be a little bit sedentary there, just winding down at the end of the day. So, okay. So painting minis, no cons, entirely pros.
0 cons.
Yep. I think we agree. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the first episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. We always appreciate you for listening. We will talk to you hopefully every other Monday is the goal.
Every other Monday. Be there.
Well, I've been Casey.
I'm Brent.
And we will see you every other Monday.
Thanks for listening.